Well, there you all are. Hello, my name's Rick Farron, coming to you from the hub of the universe, right up here in Boston, Massachusetts. And we're glad you could come in with us today. Now, Anne Marie and I are hosting a program today, and the program is Tell Your Story of Being One of Jehovah's Witnesses. Everyone has a story to tell about being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't think that most people listening to this network have a good story to tell. I mean, there were some good things in the Watchtower, but I'm sure that everyone, for the most part, has experienced major difficulties on being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. It created a lot of issues in people's lives. So we'll open up the lines in a while. Anne-Marie will uh, kind of chat a little bit here first, and we'll open up the lines. And now we are in lecture mode, but I'll open the lines up, and if anyone wants to come on and tell us their story, and I'm also going to put up on. Well, let me see. Okay, hold on one second. We're going to put up our telephone number. So if you're listening in on YouTube, you'll be able to get the number. Just hold on one second. Let me do that right now. Let me get the number up. Okay, for some reason. Okay, so let's do that. So Anne Marie, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, getting over pneumonia. It's a beautiful day, sunshine, the birds are singing. It's beautiful. How's everything over there?
Well, everything's going good. Everything's going good. I was up late last night, of course, with our program. We had a really. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing. I said, I bet you were, my brother. You must have really been tired.
Well, I sat here for 6 hours. What really surprised me, I mean, we're talking about the ex-witness world here, so we can bring it up a little bit, but really what surprised me, and we talked about it on our news last night, the big elephant in the room for Jehovah's Witness
Yeah.
news was this woman, Selena, and she had a TikTok video. You saw it, I'm sure. Yep.
No, I didn't. In fact, I didn't know anything about it. I don't do TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or anything else. But I did listen to the show. It was, yeah, it was something.
It was something else, but she called in. I couldn't believe it. She called into the program, her and her sister, and well, I won't get into it. And on the news, we'll get into that, and we can talk about that on the news. So you guys kind of stay with us for the news. We'll talk all about what happened last night. As a matter of fact, it was one of our most listened to programs that we ever did. We had over 300 people listening in live, and we're going to discuss that in JW World News after this program. But anyways, Anne Marie, what happens here is a lot of people leaving the Watchtower right now. I mean, more than we can even understand. It's more than we think. And you always talk about the PIM-Qs. Even if a person hasn't totally, opened the door and left the Kingdom Hall, there's a lot that are just questioning. And we call those
They
people.
are questioning.
Yeah, so you think that number's big, do you?
I really do, because as I said in an earlier program a few months back, every single time I would go on Facebook, as you know, there are a number of forums where people that are questioning the Watchtower, those who have come out, they can go on and tell their story or make their comments or tell what finally made them, it finally pushed them over the edge, if you will. A lot of these witnesses, they can take a lot. It's like the straw that broke the camel's back. A lot of these loyal witnesses, they just swallow down their doubts. Oh, they're just imperfect men. Oh, Satan's just trying to get me to leave Jehovah. Those were the excuses I gave myself. But there comes a point where many of these witnesses begin to question, where they can't keep swallowing those doubts down. And the reason why I know that the PIM-Q group is growing within the organization is all of the Reddit that says, I just woke up. I can't tell you, and I know you've seen it too, I just woke up, or I don't know what's going on, but, this third circuit overseer said this, or this guy keeps, calling me and threatening me, and they're taking away my privileges, and I don't understand. I've never done anything wrong, and they're just really chastising me. When they have woken up, they're basically PMOs. They're physically in, but mentally, oh no, you cannot fool me anymore. But the PIMQs, I worry about them. I pray for them because they're not sure. They're afraid that their doubts and their questions are showing that they themselves are, quote unquote, weak in the truth. There's something's wrong with them. And, Watchtower always wants you to think if you feel bad or you think something's wrong, it's always you. It's never them. It's never the Watchtower. So I believe that the PIMQ group is growing, but they're scared. They're scared, and they don't want to be right. This is the sad thing, Rick. The PIMQs, the ones that are physically in but mentally questioning, they don't want to be right. They want to be in that little bubble where they're in this fairy tale land of being in God's organization among the whole association of brothers. They're in the truth. Oh, we're going to be in a paradise. I'm going to see my dead mom and my dead brother again. And, it's a fantasy, and they don't want to wake up. Even my own JW mother, Nazi JW mother, told me I don't want to know when I was sharing with her what I was learning. Thank you. Excuse me, Rick.
Well, no, that's good. I'm glad you can carry on like that and at least express yourself, because we all should be expressing ourselves. I always detect in you, Anne Marie, you're a nice, calm, spirited woman, but at times I see there's something that really bursts your bubble, so to speak, when you get into the treatment of people get in the Watchtower. And even when you were just talking there, I could see a voice tone changed when you talked about the loyal people that are in there still and still adhering to the dictates of a Watchtower. And when you stop and think about it, that's I often talk about things that keep me awake at night. And that's one of the things that does that. I know my wife Susan here, she has two beautiful daughters. I mean, really. And they don't want to talk to her. They're still, from what we understand, loyal Jehovah's Witnesses. And I have a daughter that's a loyal Jehovah's Witness. And I have to tell you, I wake up some nights and say, what is it? And, these guys are young enough. I can see if they were my age in their 60s, 70s, 80s, I can see maybe they don't want to wake up, because what are they going to do? But if you're in your 40s, your 30s, even your 50s, I'm thinking that, don't they see this? Man, don't they see the money grubbing? Don't they see all of these stories that are coming across the internet? Don't they see the Watchtower is changing its position? Just with the generation alone. Look at how many times they've changed that just in the last 10 years. 3 times. 3 times, from what I gather. And if you go back in 100 years, I've counted, well, ever since the inception of the Watchtower. So in about 120 years, they have changed the generation doctrine 16 times. And now, they talk about this overlapping generation, but now they're not even talking about it anymore. See, I'm a firm believer that the Watchtower at least thinks that they're not talking about 1914 either. I can't tell you. Well, I should say they make a little reference to it from time to time. In fact, 2 weeks ago, the Watchtower study, for the first time in like 3 years, I saw the numeral 1914. Haven't seen that. So I haven't seen that. And I've been looking at a lot of these publications lately. They're trying to get away from that teaching. But they brought up, once again, in a subtle way, that, 1914, of course, brought about plagues on the earth and World War I and all of that. So, but they don't, they're trying to get away from it. They're trying to get away from it. I mean, when I was a witness and you were, Anne Marie, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, I mean, every article in the Watchtower had something to do with 1914. So we don't hear that anymore. But it's a changing organization. And I'm just thinking that people have got to wake up. They've got to. You can't stay in a cult forever. Geez, at some point you're going to say, I'm running out the door. I've had enough of this control. And we hope that can happen, Anne Marie.
Well, that's true. But, it's the Watchtower has so deftly and so cleverly manipulated the rank and file to be staring straight at the governing body. It's like they're in this car called Watchtower, and they're staring straight ahead at the road called governing body. So when the governing body slowly turns the car, it feels like they're still staring straight ahead, but they don't seem to feel that they're turning off the road they were on, and now they're taking a detour, and now they're on a junction, and now they're on a completely different freeway going in a completely different direction, but they still feel like they're staring straight ahead, following the governing body, Jehovah's mouthpiece. It's sad how easily they're manipulated, but it's double sad that they would rather be manipulated than to have to use their own brain, God forbid.
I'm with you. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to open up the lines. So I'm going to open up the lines, and if you'd like to come on, well, why don't you give us your story in the Watchtower? Even if you told your story before, just give us your story. Don't spend more than 10, 15 minutes. Get like a condensed version of your story in the Watchtower, or maybe someone else's story that you know about that's kind of touching you in a way that, boy, irritates you. It gets under your skin. That's a good way to put it, right, Anne Marie? Some of the stuff gets under our skin. It's like, geez, how is it these people can just continue to be the way they are? No, just even to talk about just a little bit, these people that came on last night. Now, we've always talked about child sex abuse in the Watchtower. We talk about that every week. Sometimes I even don't go into all of the stories because there's so many of them. Every week I see it coming across the internet. But we had these two women, ladies, that came on last night, sisters, and they were accusing the Watchtower of being grossly involved in child trafficking. Now, I'm not going to doubt that for 1 second. I'm not. But boy, they really had a big time story to talk about. And this is how evil the Watchtower is. And their presentation last night really went pretty deep into what's going on. And people were really listening in, and they were on the edge of their seat. And but the point I'm trying to make here is even the witnesses that they're now coming to grips, even loyal witnesses are coming to grips with the fact that the organization does indeed have pedophiles, and a lot of them. And I've been looking on some of these Facebook groups for Jehovah's Witnesses, not ex-witnesses, but Jehovah's Witnesses that are still loyal. And they're just shrugging this off. And this is ticking me off. You know, they're hearing it straight on, front and center. They're hearing that there's pedophiles in their organization. And their answer simply is, well, there's pedophiles in every organization. That is not an answer. And I'm going to tell you something. My answer back to a person that says that, okay, I understand there's pedophiles in the Boy Scouts, the Southern Baptists. I understand the Catholic Church, all of these groups, religions, they have pedophiles. They have sex abuse going on. But Jehovah's Witnesses, they're the number one religion in God's eyes. God picked them as the only ones to have the truth. Would Jehovah allow a religion that he picked to have the truth be the only ones that having this? Would he allow them to have pedophiles? The answer is absolutely not. I think that's logical thinking. I think that's sound reasoning. I don't think you have to go to school to understand that. But geez, I hope something's going to knock these witnesses off. Okay, so we're going to unmute we're going to at least bring you out of lecture mode. And if you'd like to speak up, let's do it right now. Hold on, bring it into open mode.
All participants are unmuted.
All right, so if you want to speak up, you're unmuted. So would you like to say something? Who's this?
Rick, it's Dick.
Oh, it's Dick. All right, good. I didn't recognize you, Dick. Didn't recognize you. I see a bunch of people on here. Yeah. So how are you?
Well, I am terrific. I'm terrific. You have a lot to tell you. First of all, I'd like to comment on last night's program. I couldn't get on, and there was a lot of bantering back and forth, and nobody really could get in there. But I kind of chuckled a bit when I heard somebody challenge you in your credentials. And I'd just like the audience to know that you were Jehovah's Witness for almost 50 years, that you turned down the eldest position years and years ago, and even turned down the position, or you could have had the position of a governing body member. And you studied the Watchtower day and night, and we had conversations all over the world. So I would say you have probably the best credentials of any man in the world. And I also wanted to note that the scriptures say that love builds up, but knowledge puffs up. And sometimes some people go overboard in making their point, and they won't let anybody else make their point. I just wanted to say that on that what was on the sister was on the claim sex abuse.
Selena.
Selena.
Yeah, Selena. She seemed, when I saw her video, she seemed very credible to me. But you know, on a 6 screen, you just can't come out and say definitely that she was sexually abused, because you can't prove it. And if someone was to take 6 screens or yourself to court and say defamation of character and try to sue you or shut you down, you have to provide proof of what you're saying. And I think some people in the audience missed that. And I just wanted to add a couple of little things.
I thought we were going to talk about this later on the news. I'm sorry. If we're going to talk about this, then I guess we're not going to do the show that Rick's been promoting.
All right, then I'll get off and we'll go this program then.
Well, Anne Marie, I mean,
sorry, Rick. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Rick.
I mean, we can.
I'm sorry, Rick.
I said we can talk about anything. I mean, they weren't going to go too deep into it, right?
I'm so sorry. I am very, very sorry.
All right. Well,
it's just so hard to get onto a subject, and then you said we're going to talk about it later.
All right. So, all right. If someone wants to come on, I mean, if someone would like to come on and talk about how they, that's something to do with the Watchtower. So we didn't let Dick finish. So, I mean, I don't know where we're going to go with this. But anyways, would someone like to come on and talk about their trek in the Watchtower and how they handled it? Is there anything in particular that really upset you being a witness? If you'd like to come in and talk, that'd be fine. Go ahead. You're on with us. We have, looks like we have 580. Come on, Chewy.
Hey, this is Chewy. Anyway, I was on there last night. I'll talk a little bit. I was born in the 60s. I was born in. I've got my mom's old literature, so that's how I woke up. When I started seeing this stuff, all I had to do was just go back to my mom's literature, and I was like, wow, this is what they call apostasy, huh? Wow. It's right there in front of my face. It's been right here in the library all the time. Went to Brooklyn from 90 to 94, and then I started waking up, and then about 10 years ago, I had a judicial committee, and one of the brothers actually said something that the Watchtower had contradicted, and he made a statement, and I went in there and I found out that his statement and most current information was wrong. So that means that Watchtower can actually kind of change its mind a little bit. You mean they can change that? They can change their doctrine? Oh, wow. So he actually did me a favor by saying that, and he was totally wrong in what he said. And the Watchtower, one of the recent Watchtower that he should have been aware of, stated that he was wrong. But anyway, that's kind of how I woke up. But there is now going on to this what you and Anne Marie were talking about on the PMQs and this and that. And I understand what you were saying, Rick, about people waking up and then they're seeing the witnesses seeing it. camps I'm finding. There's two different camps. Okay, one camp is like my next door neighbor. They know they have come to accept the fact that there is something going on in Pennsylvania, something big. I walked down the street about 3 weeks ago on a break because I worked virtually, and we talked there. She was there out in the front yard, and she was doing some lawn work, and I was just had a minute or two, and we visited, and we were talking about Tony Morris, and she said, "Do you think he's involved in that Pennsylvania stuff?" I said, "I don't know. I wonder what else they're covering up." That's what she said. Okay. You would think she would be woke up, right?
You would think, Chewy, yeah.
Right. Now, I call her. I call her a week later, right? Because I borrow tools off her. Her and her husband borrow tools off me, right? Anyway, so I call her. I said, "Oh, what are you doing there?" And she said, "Oh, I'm writing letters." Okay. Now you just told me that there's something wrong in Pennsylvania, that they could be hiding something big in Pennsylvania, and now you're promoting this organization through letter writing. I don't understand it. Okay, that's one way people are waking up. They got to wake up in both ways, all right? Then I got a friend that was in Brooklyn with me, and we had a conversation about a year ago, and we were talking about stuff, and we got on the pedophilia thing there a little bit. We didn't get into the doctrinal stuff, but he says, "Oh, well, and this is a statement he made. He said, "Oh, I don't agree with everything the governing body says. I just take it with a grain of salt." I said, "What?" And I said, "What'd you say?" He said, "Oh, yeah, they've been wrong before." And he actually quoted the paragraph from the Watchtower that I'm fixing to quote it, and he quoted it in where it says that they're neither inspired nor infallible and can err in doctrinal things and organizational things, something along that line. And he quoted that verbatim. And he said, so they've said stuff in the past that hadn't went true. So I just take their word as whatever they say is a grain of salt. And I went, whoa! And about a month later, we reconnected again. We started talking, and I brought it up to him. I said, "No, I got a question for you. And I reminded him of what he said, and I said, "I agree with you 100%. I take what they say with a grain of salt. But what would you say to your body of elders? What would they say to you if you walked into a body of elders meeting and you said that to them?" He said, "Oh, I wouldn't say that to them."
Yeah.
Saying he's an elder. So, here he won't acknowledge that there's anything going on in Pennsylvania, but he's woke up that he doesn't really pay attention. He doesn't give a flip about their doctrines anymore. He doesn't pay attention to them.
Well, well, how is it? I mean, Chewy, here you have, really evidence of people just seeing it right in front of their nose, but geez, they're not going to budge out of that organization. Nuts.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Rick, can I say something?
Yeah, thank you, Chewy. Yeah, go ahead. Who's this?
That's Steve, Rick.
Oh, Steve. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my dad said something to me once, and I thought it was an incredible statement. This was when I was in the organization, and I was, I believed it and all the rest of it. And he said to me once, he said, even if this wasn't the truth, I'd still want to be a Jehovah's Witness. And I looked at him and I couldn't understand it. And I understand it now. And what's being discussed is kind of confirming it, really, because it's not just about something being true and right. It's everything else. It's everything that they've put into it. It's their way of life. It's the camaraderie. It's the social network. It's everything that they've built up, and they've made themselves comfortable there. And so it's not just about what's true and what's not true. That's not important to some of them. That's not.
And I've seen elders, spiritual men, so-called spiritual men in the congregation, who will stand up and give a talk about not watching. Do you remember that time when we were all told to avoid soaps on the television? We shouldn't really watch them and all that, because all it's talking about is marriage, adultery and gossiping and all this sort of thing. So we shouldn't really watch soaps. And I went round to an elder's house one evening. His wife was very inactive at the time. She answered the door. I went in to the lounge to speak to him, and he was sat on his couch, and he was watching a program in this country called Coronation Street, which has been going for years. It's a soap, and those are the kind of soaps that we weren't supposed to be watching. He was sat there, and when I went in, he looked at me, and he went red-faced. And not just that, I've had instances where I've spoken to elders in like a social setting where there's nobody else around, and the way they talk is not the way they talk on the platform. It's like they've got one face for the platform and for the congregation, but actually in reality, they're doing something completely different. And so that proves to me it's not about what's right and what's wrong for many of them. It's just about the fact that they enjoy being in it for whatever reason. Their whole life is glued to it and attached to it in so many different ways. So, and I think that's what part of the problem is. You can point out discrepancies in the scriptures, and you can do all that, and they're not interested. And for some of them, I don't know how many, but definitely for some of them, it's not about what's true. It's not about the religion being correct or incorrect. It's about their life in it. And what's been discussed tonight, this afternoon or tonight, whatever it is where you are, that's just confirmed for me.
Well, no, that's a good thought. I thank you for bringing that up, Steve. Really, and like I say, that man was living a double life, and here he is, supposedly a good witness, and he's watching soap operas, and they talk a good game. All the witnesses, they go to the meeting and they put their pretty dress on and their pretty suits, and they polish their shoes and they slick their hair back, and they all walk in like, oh, I'm so pure and so righteous. But Jesus, as soon as they get out of the Kingdom Hall, they're doing all kinds of stuff. And the more we talk about the witnesses, the more stuff we're finding out they do that is wrong. Thank you, Steve. I enjoyed listening to you. Always like, excuse me, always love to listen to you. Thank you. So, Anne Mary, what are you going to say? What do you think? Do you think the witnesses are living double lives or what?
I think a lot of them have to hold on to their own sanity, but I also think a lot of them are just continuing to hold on and trying harder and harder to live what they call a spiritual life, a faithful life. I know my brother is, I know my other brother is, I know my mother is, I know how I was. I was shocked to find out that there were so many witnesses living double lives. But I think that there are a lot who just pray more. They pray for strength. They pray for faith. They listen to the kingdom music. But just anyway, I was just thinking, remember those times, my brother, when we were young? It was like a source of pride when you had older literature, like when your bound volumes went back 20 years, 30 years. Oh, I've been in the truth this long, that long. And then in our time and later times, and this time we're in now, how many times have we heard that the Watchtower wants us to get rid of our old literature? They cleaned out the library. If there are any other books that are older from older Watchtower times, they don't want you looking at them. If you get caught looking at the old literature, what are you looking at? What are you doing? Are you an apostate? It's more and more black and white, toe the line, believe what we tell you to believe, don't ask questions, don't research us, don't do this, don't do that. And then before it was stay faithful to Jehovah, now it's stay faithful to the Watchtower. It really is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rick.
Well, you got me thinking. You got me thinking with throwing the books out. Now, I'm just wondering, and maybe the audience might even be able to give us some help with this, but I'm wondering if the Watchtower came clean right now, if they came out and said, look at folks, and they're going to have to do, they're either going to have to come clean or go out of business, or one or the other. But I'm just thinking out loud. If the Watchtower would just come out right now and say, folks, we're going to report to you folks something very strange, and we hate to even say it, but we have had individuals infiltrate our organization that have really soured the name of Jehovah's Witnesses. So in an attempt, I should say, in an attempt to save this organization, we're going to come clean. Now, I know you guys are sitting there saying, come on, Rick, that is absolutely nuts. But hey, this might be the only way they could save it. So they say, we're just going to come clean. We're going to tell the truth. And I have to, they can say that they have in the past not told the truth. They've been wrong with so many prophecies. They've been wrong in covering up child abuse. They've been wrong with their shunning policy. They have been wrong with their blood policy. They have been wrong with their dating policies. Everything you can possibly think of, they've been wrong on. So if they would come out and just say, look, we want to make Jehovah's name great again, kind of like Trump is doing with America, right? We want to make Jehovah's name great again, and we're gonna reform. You think it's too late, Anne-Marie, to do that?
Rick, even my husband, who was never in the watchtowers, over here laughing his head off. You know what? If somebody came to you that you had trusted and believed in for years, no matter what anybody tried to tell you about that person for 20, 30, 40 years, you believed in this person, you saw they're a nice guy, she's a wonderful woman, blah, blah, blah. And then that person came to you and said, I've been lying to you all these years. I'm sorry. Won't you still continue to trust in me? Really, Rick, what has the Watchtower ever really told the truth about? They have lied and lied and lied. And no, I think that's a big fantasy, but I think it's funnier than heck that you would think about that. You got some comedy on the road routine coming up on you?
Well, I was thinking that, because I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something right off the bat. When I went down there to visit Brother Loesch, well, he invited me to go down there. I didn't go down there on my own. He asked me to come down. So I'm sorry. Okay. All right. So anyways, when I went down there to see Brother Loesch, I say brother, but Mr. Loesch, call him what you want, but the governing body member, and when I came home, I said, man, this is not a good organization. This is wrong what they're doing. I can see it up front and close. I can see that this is a bad organization. I don't want to be part of it. And then I got thinking, well, Will Loesch is still talking to me and he's writing me letters. I says, well, at least he wrote me a letter from Uruguay and he wanted me to stay in contact with him. So I said, where I still have an open relationship with Loesch, I got this other anointed brother that was wiggling his way loose out of the Watchtower as well. He was an older brother, a man. And I said, why don't you come down to Brooklyn with me? Let's, slick our hair back, polish our shoes, and look spiffy and go down there and talk to Loesch. He'll talk to us. He'll bring him right up to the office and we can talk. And let's talk about reforming the Watchtower. Well, he got a little skitsy and didn't want to do that. But I was going to tell him back then, this would have been in the year 2000. I wanted to do this. There was big changes taking place in the Watchtower. And I would have loved to tell Loesch that they got to change. They really have got to change or it's going to cost them millions of dollars. But I don't think they would have listened anyways, Anne-Marie. Maybe I was just looking through rose-colored glasses then too. I don't know. But I think it's too late for them to return to a more normal religion. I don't know if they were ever normal, but they're certainly abnormal now. Yeah.
They've never been normal.
Yeah.
They always had, I would say, I don't want to say demonic, but they were so heavily into masonry and just the fact that they used to meet in Mason halls. And as the movement grew, somebody realized, gee, we better stop calling them Mason halls because the movement grew. Is that me or?
No, it's just 906. I'm muting you. Don't go unmuted. Just stay muted, okay? All right, go ahead. I'm sorry, Anne-Marie.
No worries, my brother. You know, the growing movement of the Bible students, and then they were the international Bible students and so on. Somebody got the idea, we can't say that we're meeting in Mason halls anymore. We're going to have to call it something else. And of course, they changed it to Kingdom halls. And a lot of witnesses don't know that. And it's, I hear echoing somebody.
Don't. There's always going to be a little bit of noise, Amber. Try to work around it. Just try to work around it. There's always going to be some echoing or something. If it's really bad, we'll take care of it. Just work around it. Yep.
No worries, no worries. And as far as like, I always say, the deeper you dig, the more dirt you find with the Watchtower. And the fact that anybody would just shrug off, oh well, you know, there's wherever there's a group, there's gossiping. Oh, there's pedophiles everywhere. I can't believe how easily a lot of these faithful Watchtowerites will just shrug it off, because if they don't want to have to face the personal responsibility of saying, wow, I have to make a big boy choice. I have to put on my big boy boxer shorts or my big girl panties and recognize that I have been loyal to and faithfully serving and promoting a cult that protects pedophiles and threatens the victims, even little children, and threatens their parents if they say anything. This organization has preached that it's God's will to let your wife bleed to death, your son, your daughter, your grandmother bleed to death, because the Watchtower says that God said you can't take blood, which is insanely crazy right there. And the fact that they would, you know, like I said, just kind of accept the pedophile issue. How in the world can you forget that God's organization is supposed to be way above all of the false religion? Why would you say, oh, well, all religions have that, all organizations have that? Are you actually accepting the fact that your organization is not only just as bad, but probably a lot worse? Because at least the other organizations, most of them, are claiming to represent God directly, not representing Jehovah's name. So you should be even more pure and more clean, and yet it's okay. Why? Because your organization tells you to think that way. It's really crazy. But the thing I wanted to say about the pedophile issue and child trafficking that you brought up earlier, I remember, and I cannot forget, that the last time I heard Johnny the Bethelite on the 6 screens that he came on was January 19th, 2019. It's in the archives. Just look up January 19th. 2019. I think it's Watchtower Behind Closed Doors, my brother. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I got it right here. Let's go. So that's Johnny. That's Johnny the Bethelite, and I'm glad you brought that up, because you know he came on, and you're absolutely right. It was January 19th, 2019. You got a good memory, Anne Marie, and that was the last program he ever did with us. And he was talking on there about a kiddie porn ring, child trafficking, sex trafficking, whatever you want to call it, perverted stuff going on. But he brought that up 4 years ago. 4 years ago, nobody believed him. Nobody at all believed him. And yet he had a radio program right here on the 6 Screens Network, and people could call him in, but a lot of people didn't believe him. You believed him. I believed him. A number of other people did too. But he was the first to really bring this up. And it was so outlandish. It was so over the top that no one wanted to even believe Johnny. But now we have these people coming forward, as they came forward last night, and they're talking about sex trafficking, and everybody's cuddling them, and rightfully so. If they've been hurt in a Watchtower, really, they're victims, and I do feel bad. But all of a sudden now everyone's really open to everything. But geez, Johnny was talking about this stuff 4 years ago, and everyone discounted what he had to say. Thank you, Anne-Marie, for speaking about that. Yes.
Well, my brother, go ahead, dear.
I just gotta know, do you people still believe, is Johnny swimming with the fishes? Is that still the story on that? I haven't heard his name mentioned in a long time.
Well, Mike, I know you're one of the naysayers, and that's okay. I'm not going to beat you up over that. You have a right to believe what you want, and we all do. I'm not going to. The only time that I get mad at people is when they start throwing names around. That's the only time I get mad. But I'm never going to get mad because you give your opinion. If you don't believe in Johnny, that's all right. I'm not going to get mad at you.
I don't know, Rick. Maybe he is telling the truth. I have no idea. I mean, it does some of it. I don't know. I mean, I wanted to say too, Rick. I really got a kick out of last night. That Reese character. I think he proved my point that he's been in an insane asylum before. The way he was acting, I stand by what I said about Reese.
Well, we'll let that one go. We'll talk a little bit about that on the news, but we'll let that one go for now. Boy, I'll tell you, it was a rocking night last night. I'll tell you that. All right. Well, anyways, listen. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, you can see on the bottom of the screen to call into the program 727-731-6701. Well, why don't you call that number? Are you watching us on YouTube? Call that number. Come in and why don't you talk? Why don't you talk and let us know what you think? Go ahead. You're on with us. You're on with us. Okay. They're not going to talk, but okay. Who would like to speak up? Anyone want to speak up? Here's your.
This is Chewy.
Yes, Chewy.
Oh, I was just going to say, most of the time I really don't agree with what Mike from Michigan says, but I agreed with him this time. And he called Reese out 3 or 4 years ago when Reese was talking about them helicopters chasing him in Manhattan and Watchtower logos on them. And he called up. I got to give hats off to Mikey, because he called Reese out 3 or 4 years ago on that. So anyway,
yeah, I do remember. Thank you, Chewy. Yeah. So if you would like to, if you want to speak up, tell us your story in the Watchtower. Did you how'd you feel when you were a witness? We haven't heard from you. So if you'd like to tell your story, do we have 213? Want to talk to us?
Mr. Farron?
Yes. Go ahead, 213.
Hey Rick, how you doing?
Hi,
We got a few people here. Let's go with 213 first. We had him on first. Go ahead, 213.
Hey, Rick, how you doing?
I'm doing good, John. Doing good.
Yo, Rick, I was wondering, I was watching a Tim and Mike video, and one of the he was showing a video of a guy that was in one of the JW dramas, and he came out as homosexual, but do they disfellowship the people at Bethel?
I'm going to address this dumbass. I'm going to address him right now, and get used to it.
All participants are muted.
That's Reese once again trying to come in, friends. You know, I've got to get a hold of Reese and talk to him. His behavior is odd. It's very, very odd. He's my friend. He's always been my friend. I have no reason at this point to disconnect, because I don't really think he knows what he's saying. He wants to come in and attack everybody, and I'm just going to have to keep things muted for now. I'm not going to allow him to come on here and change the whole venue here. And he tried to do it last night, and he called us all names. He accused us all of, being Watchtower operatives. He accused me of not, speaking up for these girls, which I did. I mean, he wasn't even listening. I mean, obviously people are going to be skeptical, but we'll get into that. We'll get into that with the news. But Anne-Marie, I just wanted to bring up here, we had a bunch of people come in, but I'm not going to open the lines right now. I'm not going to open the lines because of Reese coming in. If he wanted to come in and talk in a civil way and calm down a little bit, I'd be willing to really talk to him on a one-on-one and let him get some of this stuff off of his chest. But if he's going to come in raging and calling people names and getting all upset with me, I'm not going to let him come in. So, we'll see what he wants to do. If he wants to come and, let's give the olive branch to each other, well, I'm willing to do that. But I'm not going to have him come on here and go into one of his tirades. So if he wants to come on, I'll give him time to talk. I'll even give you folks on there time to talk. We can do that on JW World News. So anyways, Anne-Marie, I mean, we had a lot of people that were going to speak up. But you know, this is one thing. This is the one thing that I always feared, even if I went right back to the very beginning of starting the Six Screens Network, is what happens when people want to just get in and start doing whatever they want to do. That was one of the biggest problems. I knew that people would come in cursing and yelling and screaming. I know that would happen. And there's no way to stop all of that all the time. It's going to happen. But that was one of the things that now we're here. Now we have come after 18 years, or going on with 18 years in January. I'm starting to see this. The ex-Jehovah's Witness world has got huge. I mean, really big. In fact, there's more ex-Jehovah's Witnesses than there are Jehovah's Witnesses. So there's a lot of people, they want to voice their opinion, and not everyone's in opinion with what we have to say. And for whatever reason, they want to come in, and if people come in here in an adult way, and they talk without anger and swearing and slang words, I'm willing to listen to anybody. I don't care what they have to say about the Watchtower. And that's the very premise of starting this network, that we'll listen to everybody. But geez, you got to be civil. You can't go into a tirade and call everybody a jerk because they disagree with you. Geez, if I had to live a life where people disagreed with me and be angry, people disagree with people all the time. We all have opinions, don't we? But geez, when a person voices their opinion and then you have to be lambasted because of it in a disingenuous way, that irritates me. That irritates me. Does that irritate you, Anne Marie? Well, she can't speak up either. She can't speak up either. Let me see if I can't get Anne Marie back on with us. When I go into my lecture mode here, what happens is it mutes everybody, so everybody can't come in. So let's do this. Oh well, I did have. I'm gonna unmute Anne Marie so she can come on with us, and she should be unmuted now. So Anne Marie,
Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to go to John. Let me find John here. I got a bunch of people calling in here today. John was going to come in and give us a little expose of his thoughts about the Watchtower. So John, I'm going to unmute you. John, go ahead, John. Come on, well, tell us what you were going to say. I'm sorry we had to cut you off, but I didn't want to get into another screaming session with Reese. Jay's had enough of that.
Oh no, I understand. But I was like I was saying, I saw Mike and Kim's video about a month ago, and one of the videos was a guy at Bethel that did one of the dramas, and he came out as homosexual, and I was wondering, do they disfellowship him at Bethel, or does he have to go back to his own congregation to be disfellowshipped, or how does that work?
How do you think it works, John?
Well, I mean, because the video of I went and looked at the drama. It's still on jw.org. So I was just wondering, do they just kind of keep it hush hush because they don't want people to start like looking and trying to figure out, that might cause an exodus. But then if he's on Facebook saying, with his boyfriend and stuff, that can also cause them to panic too. So I was just wondering, how do they handle that kind of stuff?
Well, right now, the Watchtower's in panic mode. They don't know what to do. There's still some videos, from what I can understand, of even Tony Morris being up. They pull most of them down. But, geez, they got to be very careful here. They're tiptoeing through the tulips. If they start doing too many things, people are going to really notice it. So they got to kind of be very careful in what they do.
Oh.
Yeah, they got to.
Also, Rick, I was wondering if back in my mother was baptized in 1967, and back then when they disfellowship people, they would actually announce what they did, like so and so was disfellowship for adultery, or so and so was disfellowship for fornication. Now, would they ever go back to doing that? You think, announcing what actually they did?
No. They would never do that. Well, why do you think they would never do it, John? I mean, what if they said, what if they came on the stage and said, well, Brother John is no longer going to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses. We caught John at a bar and he was stone cold drunk. And suppose you weren't, what would you do?
Okay, take them to court.
Yeah, you take them to court. They're lying about you, so they're not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. No.
Okay, but that's what really got me out of with the disfellowshipping thing. I thought it just was so cruel to treat people, shunning people, and I just never could swallow that. And that was one of the things that kind of woke me up. You asked about what kind of opened our eyes. It was a disfellowshipping, because at my hall they disfellowship you sneeze the wrong way.
Yeah, well, we're glad you called in today, John. Always good to hear from you. Thank you for coming in today and talking to us. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
Thank you. Anne-Marie, did you have some thoughts?
No, I appreciate what John said. I'm from the old days when they would say, Anne-Marie has been disfellowshipped for conduct unbecoming a Christian. That could cover everything, even though I did not commit any conduct unbecoming a Christian. But they got away from, Brother John has been disfellowshipped for adultery, or Brother John is disfellowshipped for larceny or gossiping or something. They would, refer to something. Usually it was kind of a blanket accusation, but we know that Watchtower is very good and always looking to protect their behinds. So they started saying, unbecoming a Christian, conduct unbecoming a Christian. It could be you were drunk, you could have been fornicating, adultering, been a pedophile, whatever, but they wouldn't say what it was about. So of course everybody's going to start gossip. Then they switched to Brother John is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses, because they can't take a chance on being sued or accused of slander. And it's amazing how they can do what they do and say what they're saying without actually doing what they're doing or saying what they're saying, but all the rank and file get the message. So I'm still waiting for someone to come on and maybe just give us a little synopsis of their trek as a believing Watchtowerite. I mean, I was one of those weirdos that even as a child, up until I left, I thought that the Watchtower, specifically the Watchtower and Awake, every time I bought them, because back then we still had to buy our magazines and books, I literally would smell the paper and think this was produced at Bethel. And I would smell the paper of the Watchtower and the Awake and literally hold the magazines to my heart, because to me, these magazines were sacred. I was such a true believer, absolutely, unequivocally. And no matter how badly I might have been treated, no matter what horrible things were said about me, I always remembered the scripture, I believe in Peter, where it says, as far as it depends upon you, be peaceable with all men. So when people would be saying horrible things about me or whatever, and I'd be hurt, I would turn it around and look at myself and say, who am I to judge? Am I being this way? I have to look at myself and remember that it's not about somebody else. It's about how am I serving Jehovah? Am I a gossip? Am I judgmental? Because I didn't want to be judgmental or critical or be a gossip. Thank God I can honestly say I was never one to gossip. I hate gossiping. But the thing is, everybody has a Watchtower story. And a lot of people have felt that maybe they didn't have a venue to actually express what their personal Watchtower story was. So I'm really thankful to you, Rick, for coming up with this show where people can come on and share their Watchtower story. And I'm still hoping that somebody will come on and not talk about something else. We can talk about something else later, but I'm really looking forward to hearing somebody else's Watchtower story, even yours, Rick, your story of struggling through that summer in 1969 with the baby and the carriage and the heat and the subway and being so young. I can't forget that.
All right. Well, no, that was something else. Hey, what we'll do, we're gonna unmute everyone. And Anne-Marie would love to hear your trek. We got about 10, 15 minutes left here on our program. But Anne-Marie would love to hear a little story about Watchtower that you can tell us. So I just want to double check here. We do have a lot of people coming into the stream today and onto our radio network. So let's come out of this mode now. Everyone's going to be unmuted. And what I want you to do is, if you want to talk right now, I'm going to open up and, be the first out of the chute, and we'll bring you on. Okay, let's bring
All
it.
participants are unmuted.
All right, who would like to speak up? Who would like to speak up? You're on with us right now. It looks like we've got 603. Gilbert Gonzalez, you're on with us. Okay, let's go to 312, Chicago, Illinois. 312.
Hi, this is Stefan. How are you?
Good, Stefan.
Hi, Stefan.
Hi, good morning, Emery. How are you? Or afternoon, I should say. How are you?
We're good. What's your story, Stefan? I would love to know.
Okay, well, my story was my story. So, first of all, I have to say my parents became witnesses when I was a child. I think I was about 3, so that was spoon-fed this stuff from the beginning. My father got this fellowship very early on. I mean, I was so young when it happened, I didn't even know what this fellowship was, but everybody was crying. So, and then when I went home, there was my dad, like he always was. So I never understood what happened until many, many, many years later. So the situation that I was in was my mom was ultimately a regular pioneer. I think she pioneered for about 30 years. My dad never came back. So you had what Watchtower likes to call a divided household. But of course, for me, that was a blessing in disguise because my dad was a real man. He was a real dad. And so a lot of things that probably could have happened to me, from pedophilia to just being, abused by these elders, didn't happen because everybody was scared of my father because he was not a witness. So you did something to me, he's going to come and find you, and you're going to have a conversation. He could care less about what the Bible said and care less about the governing body, all that. You did something to my kid, it's going to be a problem. So that saved me in many different ways. But like most witness kids, I went to all the meetings. I would auxiliary pioneer during the summer, sweating to death out there in the summer heat. I even auxiliary pioneered on my winter breaks. I remember doing what was called street corner work, which you're tramping up and down the street at 6 in the morning, harassing people as they're trying to go to work in the middle of the winter. And I would do that every year during winter break. So that kind of continued on. And then my ultimate plan, because this is what you were spoon-fed, I never wanted to be a regular pioneer. That just didn't interest me. But I thought I'd go to Bethel for maybe 4 years at the most, and then come back home and try to get a job and get my life ready to get married, and then ultimately be a ministerial servant and then an elder. And none of that ever happened. But that was the early years. I had the typical thing where I wasn't able to go to Bethel. I did get a job, got married, was a theocratic family, if you will. Then one day the wife left the quote unquote truth, left the marriage, left everything. And that, of course, just kind of threw my life after that. And so I can say really that was kind of the beginning of me leaving, was going through that experience. And I'll just say one other quick thing so that somebody else can talk. When I went through some of the most difficult times in my life, so when my marriage failed, I went overnight to being a single parent of 2 kids. The youngest one wasn't even walking. At the same time that was happening, my father was becoming very seriously sick, and constant hospital visits, ultimately had to be in a nursing home, and then ultimately he passed. This is all during the same period. And I can honestly say none of the witnesses assisted me in any way with anything. Nobody ever called. No elders ever came and tried to give us in any way. And I started seeing the hypocrisy of how they talk about being so loving and loving the friends and this and that, and the elders being, that shelter from the storm, if you will. And yet, when I was going through a storm, not one of them ever so much as asked how I was doing or volunteered to help me in any way. And that's why I said that kind of really was the beginning of me finally waking up and ultimately leaving about, I guess maybe like 4 years ago. So that's the story in a nutshell.
Well, that's very good, Stefan. Yeah, go ahead, Emery.
I just wanted to thank Stephen for sharing that. I always kind of get afraid when we say, tell your story, because ex-witnesses tend to talk a lot. As you've noticed, I talk a lot. But he really gave a pretty clear picture. You did a wonderful job giving all of us a clear picture. And I almost butted in and asked, and did you get any help or support or phone calls or offers to babysit the children when your father was sick and you were struggling? You said your baby, when your wife left you, was just not even a year old or barely a year old. And, they're supposed, any religion, any Christian religion, they'd be bringing food. They would be offering to mow your lawn. Do you need any help? They'll babysit your children. They'd call to say, how are you? And I really appreciate you brought up that one example of the insane lack of love. If you're not a circuit overseer or a presiding overseer or somebody you really looked up to, basically a Watchtower celebrity, you're not going to get any kind of love or attention, not generally. And I'm so sorry you went through that, and I really appreciate your sharing. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Yeah, we got some others. We got some others that want to come on. Did you want to come on and give you a quick little story about your trek in the Watchtower? We did have a number of people that wanted to come on. Now's the time to do it. Just unmute yourself and come on. We had got was 720. Does 720 want to come on? I just saw them on here a couple of minutes ago. We've got let's go. Let's go to. Let me see what we got. 989. I think I know who that is. Go ahead, 989.
Oh yeah, I'll just talk real quick. I probably brought this up before, maybe, but see, my parents got baptized in 1980, I believe, 80 or 81. I was just a baby, but I'm sure I've mentioned this before. But my mother had a lot of serious mental problems, and none of this ever happened until they were in the Watchtower. Interestingly enough, but I always remember this, Rick. I'm sure I mentioned this. When my mother died, I'll never forget this. My sister asked my dad, "Hey, Dad, how come you don't have any pictures of you and Mom's wedding? Why don't you have any pictures?" They had some pictures at the funeral home. He said, because my sister said to him, "Dad, I've never seen a picture of, from your wedding. Didn't you have pictures?" And he told us, he said, "Yeah, we had pictures." So when my mother was having these mental problems, she's having these mental problems, the idea was a demon in the house. So he tells us the story, and I knew this had happened. They got rid of some stuff. He said when they burned up some stuff at the house, I guess her stepbrother had lived there for a while. He was a weirdo. Maybe they thought that was bringing the demons in. So my dad told me and my sister, he said the elders were there. They burned all their wedding pictures. That's why they didn't have any.
That is terrible. That is terrible.
I'm serious. I'll never. I never knew that because I never really thought about it. But I remember my sister. She asked my dad. He said, I guess she put some pictures of my mom, at the funeral. And I remember my sister asked my dad. He said, "There's no pictures of your guys' wedding." And that's what he told her. I knew they burned some stuff up there. But I didn't know that they burned their wedding pictures. That I did not know that. Never.
No, that's a shame. That's a shame. Geez, those are very.
Funny, because I mean, yeah. See, my mom. Well, my mom grew up like in a foster home, but her brother, or it wasn't her real brother, but he had lived there for a while, and I just thought they burned up some of his stuff. Is what I didn't know they burned their wedding picture. Because I asked my dad, I said, "Well, why did you allow them to burn that?" And he kind of said, "Well, he didn't really. He just said at the time, I should say
that is so evil. How could the elders even participate in something like that? Geez, wedding pictures can be so precious for people. How could the elders even, there must have been a sensible elder that would say, "No, we're not going to burn." But that's what they did. I've heard stories similar to this. But wedding pictures, come on, Watchtower. Yeah.
Yeah, he said there was 3 elders there. I mean, I know one of them. Yeah, he said there was one. He said there was one black elder. He was out there with a metal rake raking the fire. He said one of them even actually took a Bible and opened it up. kept it open like that would help keep the spirits away or
Oh
something.
my goodness, well, that's a good story, Mike. See, now that's the Mike I know. That they just shared a good story with us, and that's it. I love it when you come on and you're nice and civil. Thank you, Mike, for doing that. We got another person coming in from the UK. Did you want to share your story, Steve?
Well, I've just opened it up, but I'm quite happy to step down if somebody else wants to talk that hasn't had a chance yet.
Go ahead. You're on with us.
Okay. I just wanted to share something. I've got plenty of experiences and stories I could tell. I've already given my life, my story with Anne Marie a little while ago. But I just wanted to relate one thing once. My father died in 2006, and obviously my mother was obviously devastated. Well, we all were. And she was in the truth in the organisation at the time. And of course, because she's got really bad health as well, she's got COPD, so she struggles with her breath. She was obviously grieving and all the rest of it. And so her meeting attendance was pretty rough. It wasn't good at all. She didn't attend that many meetings. And one of the sisters, an older sister in the congregation, who was also a widow, she needed some work done outside the house. And honestly, there must have been 30 or 40 people there doing this job outside of her house. And then a few weeks later, my mum needed some help with some decorating. She couldn't do it herself. I was in really bad health at the time as well, with some medical issues that I've still got. But anyway, so I couldn't do it. And my mum was wondering why nobody was coming around. Why there's no brothers and sisters came to offer any help. And this one brother, who was my best friend, who was an elder, he was there one day, and he just sort of rolled his sleeves up and got on with it. And my mum said to him, why is it then that nobody's coming to help? I've not had anybody offer any help. Sister so-and-so, she had all the help in the world. Well, I've got no help at all. And he turned around and he said, well, it's because you don't qualify. And what he meant by that was because I was there. Because she was a widow, yes, but she had me, her son. But the thing of it was, I wasn't in any shape to do anything anyway because of my health issues. But because she was a widow with a son, that she didn't qualify for anybody to come and help her. The real reason, I think, was because she didn't attend the meetings very often. Whereas the other sister that I told you about, she was there every single meeting all the time. And so that was a bit of an eye opener for my mum. I think that was the beginning of the end, really. So that goes to show the level of interest and sincerity.
Well, they're so cruel. They're so cruel, Steve. It's just this is turning into be quite a program where people just tell their little stories, and we hear this all the time. There's no love in the organization. You wouldn't do that to people. Geez, go help the people. Yeah, it's crazy what they do. Well, thank you, Steve, very much for coming in. Well, Anne Marie, I think maybe we might have to end the program here, but we got on a roll. We got a lot of people calling in, a lot of people listening in on YouTube as well. What do you have to say, Anne Marie? All right, let's see what we got here. Anne Marie might not be able to unmute herself. Let me see if Anne Marie can unmute herself. Anne Marie.
Okay.
Okay, there you are. Okay.
Yeah, I just got unmuted.
Okay.
Sorry, I just got unmuted. I apologize. What I'm hearing a lot from the different ones who have shared their story is that they were sincerely trying to be a good, quote unquote, Jehovah's Witness, trying to be faithful and so on. But I'm hearing three things: disillusionment, a horrible lack of love that they actually had to face. And I'm really glad that Mike came on and brought out the insanity of the demon phobia that is so prevalent in Watchtower. We know that there's pedophilia like crazy, gossiping like crazy, and demon phobias. Those are the three things that are jumping out at me. And I'm so glad when people come on and share their experience, because this is their experience, what they saw and experienced themselves. And this is so indicative of the way Watchtower really is. And it, again, comes down to loyalty to the Watchtower, like the brother from the UK just brought out. The sister that was regular at the meetings got all kinds of help. The one that wasn't regular, no help.
Well, yes, indeed. I'm glad you shared that story. We got one more person from Phoenix, Arizona. I think I know who that is too. Go ahead, 602. You're on with us.
Hey, I'll tell you a real quick story, and I think Emery's gonna love it. But well, I actually hate it because it's so sad. We're actually talking about here in Yuma and San Luis, right on the Mexican border in Arizona. There was a wedding, and everybody's there, but the Jehovah's Witness couple that was getting married had also invited a family member that was disfellowshipped. This was in the Spanish congregation. So my brother-in-law, who was being groomed to be a circuit overseer, and the young elders that are going to take his place, everybody's dressed up to go to the wedding, and they had already made up their mind that if brother disfellowship comes into the wedding, who has every right to be there because he's a family member, if he shows up, they're going to stand up out of their chairs and they're going to walk out. And sure enough, that's what happened. The disfellowship family member goes to the wedding. He was invited, and the self-righteous, unfortunately, my brother-in-law and others, wannabe elders, with their wives, stood up and they walked out. So it was a small number of them that walked out. It was only like 3 or 4 couples. But could you imagine? Everybody goes there to celebrate a marriage, and the Jehovah's Witnesses are just party poopers. They just destroy everything that is holy, pure, wholesome. And that's I know Anne-Marie's going to hate that story because it's disgusting. But that's JW life.
Boy, that is disgusting. I'm sure Anne-Marie has something to say about that. Anne-Marie, is that getting under your skin or what?
I'm trying to keep my mouth shut, Rick. That is the epitome of arrogant rudeness and self-righteousness. If you disagree with somebody, you can sit there and quietly disagree. Somebody being disfellowship, that has nothing to do with anything, but that is the way they are. If I'm at a big family reunion in a park, away from everybody will have nothing to do with me, or they won't show up because I'm going to be there. Every gathering we ever have, if they find out I'm invited, they won't be there. That's the way they are. They're rude, arrogant, and self-righteous. And they have their nose up in the air. How terrible, like the brother said. This is somebody's wedding. This is where you come together in love and congratulatory, attitude and wishing happiness. And forgive me for saying wishing, but I don't know what else to say. I'm so glad that brother shared it. Again, another example of a horrid lack of love piled on with this attitude. Thank you, Rick.
Well, thank you, Emery. No, that's but just think how the person would feel too that was disfellowshipped and walked in, and people get up and leave. You would feel like the third monkey on Noah's Ark. I mean, you would just feel like, man, what happened here? You come in, they walk out. Do you do that to another fellow human? Do you really do that? You don't do it. That's inhuman. That's punishment. That's too much. Well, Anne-Marie, a good program. In fact, is Gilbert still on there with us? Gilbert's saying, Rick, you ought to upgrade your StreamYard. I want to tell him I already did. Are you still there with us, Gilbert? Gilbert, I noticed earlier you were saying to get the professional. I've upgraded. It's costing like $55 a month. Is there even a better one or what?
No, that's the one. And what happens, let me give you an example. Let's say Dan and Angela have a show and they stream it. It will be streaming on their their YouTube channel and yours. It would be 2 streams. And that's the beautiful thing about it. So like all of the people that you bring in on Sunday, you would encourage them to have their own channel. And if it streams on the 6 screens, it'll also, so it's mutually beneficial because you're both getting attention. But the other thing about it is it allows you, like 12 people can click the link, and they don't have to show their face on the camera. They can mute the camera, but they can just talk, and you would have complete control over who can talk and who can't. You invite them into the screen, and then you just say remove from the screen. So you would have like 12 people that are waiting to come in, and you can see.
I got you. No, in fact, I might even call you this week and go over that because I do have that, and I am streaming right now on a number of different Facebook platforms. But maybe we could go over that, and you could kind of give me. I'm a little bit sketchy on how that works, but maybe if you understand it somewhat, you could kind of help me with it. Okay.
Yeah, and also it'll help other people. So if, let's just say Mike and Kim come on the show, it would stream on their platform and on yours. That's the beautiful thing about it, is that you can bring in anybody from another channel, and both of you are streaming on your respective channels.
Well, okay, no, we're going to talk more about that. Thank you. That'll give us more control too. Thank you for bringing that up. I saw you wrote that in Facebook and YouTube. Thank you, Philip. Gilbert, rather. All right, well, that's it, I guess, Anne Marie. I guess we're going to wrap it up here and go to JW World News. But thank you, Anne Marie, for coming in today, and we'll do this again in 2 weeks. I think it's a good program. In fact, I see it's getting a lot more attention than we were getting before. So, yeah, we have got, well, tell your story of being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. We might run with that. It seemed to work. Thank you, Anne Marie. Keep standing tall. Anything you want to say before we close out?
Well, I just think this is a great idea. I just applaud you for coming up with this idea to tell your Watchtower story, because everybody's story is deeply personal, because we all had our own struggle. And this is the first time that I know of on 6 Screens where this is an open invitation. I think it's wonderful. And I think every other week, every other Sunday at 6 Screen Sunday, we're going to be hearing more and more stories, because they are coming out, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Well, I'm very happy, very pleased with what I see here today. Normally, we don't get this many people on a Sunday, but it's working. And I want to thank all those people, too, on YouTube and various Facebook pages. And I want to thank you, too, for commenting. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to end this program. We're going to JW World News. That's coming up next, our Sunday edition. And, of course, that's the news the Watchtower doesn't want us talking about. But we'll see you there in just about a minute. Stay with us.